If you remember a few weeks ago, a bit of an interesting piece of information came out regarding Ferrari and the power steering, a particular kind of issue that both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were equally having with regards to the way it's being designed and utilized on this year's SF25. Now, more information has come out and it is revolving around a previous Ferrari driver, which is no longer with the team. And it seems there is a little bit of a backstory behind how this has all unfolded and how Ferrari really, in a sense, are somewhat culpable for the struggles with regards to this power steering that they currently have. Now, I am, of course, talking about Carlos Sainz. He obviously spent 3 seasons with Ferrari, and in that time it was very evident that both he and Leclerc had completely differing driving styles that required a hugely different kind of setup and feel out of the car. And that kind of evolves around many aspects, which of course some of those include power steering and just the feel from the front end and rear end, so on and so forth, which is natural for any kind of driver pairing to have. But the problem here was that last season both drivers requested something slightly different from their power steering, and Ferrari were more inclined to choose and go down the path of the one Carlos Sainz preferred. And that seems to have come back and bit them on the ass, because basically it seems now with Lewis Hamilton joining the team as well as Charles Leclerc, neither driver were happy with this particular change. And in fact, we've learned even in his first couple of outings, his first 2 laps or even first lap with the SF25 at Fiorano, Hamilton basically said, "What on earth are you doing with the power steering? Is there something wrong with it?" He was like shocked at what they were doing with regards to power steering, and he's like, "We have to make changes. There is no such kind of feeling or setup with my time in Mercedes where we were doing anything quite like this." Now, Ferrari have and will be making changes to this power steering at some point, whether it's in season this year or for next year. Now, I also want to state this isn't really a problem caused by Leclerc or Sainz in particular or Hamilton. It is more of the Ferrari kind of standpoint, the way in which they like to accommodate their drivers. And it really is an issue that began with Carlos Sainz. Now let me explain what I mean by that. So normally in a era, you have a very successful driver and car pairing. You look through the Vettel and Red Bull era, you look through the Hamilton and Mercedes era, and you look at the Max and Red Bull era that we are just about to end. All 3 of these driver car lineups, there was one specific thing all of those teams did. They created and designed the preferences with regards to their lead driver, the one driver they believed and they put all their money behind, winning the world championships for them. And that is not what Ferrari do. Ferrari, evidently, what they do is they like to accommodate both drivers, and therefore neither driver is truly happy nor comfortable in their cars as a result of that. And you can see that quite clearly throughout the time of Leclerc and Sainz's pairing, when one driver was kind of on top of everything and outperforming the other one is down in the dumps, doesn't know what he's doing wrong, and then Ferrari have to kind of readjust, rebalance that kind of performance gap with upgrades and changes to the preferences in terms of what we've been discussing in this video. And there's the problem really. Ferrari are too accommodating essentially for both drivers. You really need to focus in on more to one of your drivers and get the best out of him. And I think with a rule regulation set change coming in for 26, it is more evident than ever and important that they do that, because you need to hit the ground running. This is an era from which you could really get a huge advantage out of the field by doing so. And I'm certain all of the major teams that have driver pairings kind of confirmed already will be doing that. They will be putting, for example, Mercedes, let's forget what's going on with regards to their driver lineup. They will be putting the preferences from George Russell. For McLaren, it is more of an even Steven sort of thing. And for Red Bull, it is all about Max Verstappen's preferences within kind of the concept design. That is what Ferrari need to do, and I don't believe they will do that once again. But the silver lining Ferrari can have is this driver pairing they currently have is much more in alignment with one another in terms of driving style, driving preferences. It's quite clear and evident that's the case. Now, you may come back and say, well, Hamilton's been asking for a complete different set of things. And yes, that is true. But it's because he is someone that loves to experiment. And I think that is what he was doing at the beginning of the season. He was very much in the experimental phase of his time in Ferrari with regards to setups. I think he could probably quite easily see Leclerc's way of setting the car up was the best overall, but he was looking to see if he could find an avenue from which maybe he could set the car up completely differently and maybe luck into a win, luck into a setup. And now he's given up on that. He's now moving more and more in a line to what Leclerc's setup preferences are. And you can see across qualifying at least, there's still a kind of gap in performance in race pace, but qualifying pace, Hamilton is literally on par, if not quicker, across the last 5 weekends. And that is what I'm talking about with regards to, I think, don't be kind of fooled by what was going on in the first couple of races when Hamilton was all at C minus in China, when he was the quicker Ferrari before obviously the main race and what happened in that. So I think for Ferrari, they really have to make sure they're on top of all of these issues, make sure they really just kind of hone in on one driver. And I think that's the difficult situation they find themselves in. Can they really afford to do that with a 7-time world champ? I think you really can't really go down one of these drivers' preferences. I think you had the opportunity and ability to do that with the Sainz and Leclerc pairing. But with a 7-time champ in the team, which you've heavily invested in terms of money and resources and all of that, you have to be fair and give them both an equal opportunity to see what they can do. So therefore, I think Ferrari will be sticking with this kind of, we will work for both drivers and see what happens. Whether in the long run that pays off for Ferrari, only time will tell.